Hello, my name is Andy Smuskowitz, and welcome to the next episode of the Salvation from Destruction podcast. Today, I am honored to welcome Scott Lefko to the show. In today's episode, we are going to discuss the murder of Rosemary Newman that occurred in the Cal City Woods in Illinois in 2011. Scott is a distinguished law enforcement professional with over 3 decades of dedicated service. In 2004, Scott became a detective in the Investigations Division, a position he would hold for 2 decades. After becoming a detective sergeant, Scott took on the role of commander of the South Suburban Major Crimes Task Force, where he would serve with distinction. Throughout his career, Scott has received numerous accolades, including multiple meritorious service awards and 20 department commendations. The Illinois Homicide Investigators Association has honored him with 2 awards of excellence, one for solving a cold case in collaboration with the Cicero Police Department and another for a murder investigation in Indian Head Park, Illinois. Perhaps most notably, Scott received a Meritorious Service Award from the Chicago Crime Commission for solving a 1992 murder of a 15-year-old boy. Currently, Scott serves as the investigations commander for a town in southern Cook County, Illinois. So welcome to the show, my good buddy, Scotty Lefko. How you doing, bud?
Thanks, Andy. I'm doing great, buddy. How are you?
Very good. It's great to see you again, as always. I want to talk about this case because I know that this was a very interesting case and you were the lead detective on this case. So Why don't you go ahead and just start off by giving us a little bit of a background on it?
Well, let me start off by saying that was a really, really nice introduction that you gave me. I do appreciate that. And just like anything else, it takes a village to raise the children and a great team, no matter where you're working, to put these cases together. All the stuff that I've been a part of, had a blessed career, and it's all been a part of a team, whether that was at my department or with the task force. Some of the best years of my life that I wouldn't change for the world. We didn't get much sleep, but we did have fun, and we learned and, got those lifelong friendships together. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, definitely kudos to everybody that's been part of my life along the way.
Why don't you go ahead and just give us a little bit of background on the case of Rosemary Newman?
Back in 2011, a few years back, and the reason it always stood out to me as like one of those great cases was it was a big case. Ended up being me as the lead on it. I know you had Larry on the show before. It was Easter Sunday, and we were working. It was him, a couple other detectives. We were actually sitting in one of the districts waiting to go interview somebody on a different murder. Like, they're going to be home today, right? Because it's Easter. And so we get a call of a young lady found in the woods. It ends up being for one of the agencies that we pretty much covered any kind of major crimes for, obviously murders or suicides at times, sex assaults, anything like that. So they were responding, getting there initially, not thinking that we were going to be involved. A lot of times when it ends up in forest preserve, they end up unfortunately being suicides where people go where it's quiet and they just park and unfortunately take their lives, which is kind of what we expected from past history of cases that we worked on there. So that was kind of our thought process. Like, all right, well, we'll wait and see what develops with it. And again, we're waiting to go to do a different interview. And then next thing you know, we get the call to respond to the scene. When we get there, it ends up being a 18-year-old girl who's basically dumped in the woods with a t-shirt and underwear on. And that's it. There's no pants, no identification, no shoes, no purse, anything. So we're like kind of stuck at a point of we have to identify her first to see where this goes, where this leads, where's she from, what happened to her, right, to get to that point. So as it turns out, we're working the scene to see what we have there, anything that's going to help us. Evidence technicians are on scene, so they start processing the body once the medical examiner gets there to see if we can identify her, if there's any signs of violence and such. And where it kind of turned the case a little bit was they end up rolling her over. She was face down when we found her. And when they roll her over, we're like, oh boy, she's clearly far along in a pregnancy. And it was like, all right, well, we have to figure this out. Like, start rolling on us right now. Time's of the essence. So as we're working at, we put out what's called a type 3 message that goes out to all the agencies, basically saying, hey, this is what we have. Anybody has a missing person or somebody they're looking for that matches this description, give us a call. So we do that. And again, it's probably, I don't know, 11:30, noon in the morning. I want to say within 15 minutes, we get a call from another suburban agency, and they're at the lady's house taking missing person report for a girl matching our description. So, but again, we have to confirm that. So we had just a driver's license photo of her. We sent a couple detectives over to the residence to meet with that agency along with the family and just to get some more information on our missing loved one. And turns out we have the photo. Mom's got pictures of the missing girl. Well, unfortunately, it's our lady in the woods. But again, all we have is now a mother reporting her daughter missing, and now she's 15, 20 miles away in a wooded area. We have very little to go on at that point. That kind of sets the stage for what we were handed or what we walked into. And then obviously we're talking with mom and the brother. We're talking with the agency that's taken the missing report, which is obviously different from where she's found, and just trying to get a little background on her and boyfriend, anybody that was with her, any kind of background we can on her. I know talk about these things like they're common to us, which is victimology, right? And we've always talked about that before, but we do a victimology, which is basically a deep dive into that person's life. Like, who were they? Who did they hang out with? Where did they go? Did they go to clubs? What was their lifestyle? Friends, family, anybody, anything, anybody we can go and reach out to and talk to get a better idea of what that person was all about, who we're investigating, what's going to bring that whole case together. Were they in a high risk lifestyle? That's where that comes into a prostitution or exotic dancers. And so we started doing that, working backwards, because that's all we have is unfortunately this girl who's in the woods. So as we worked through it, we kind of developed the fact that after talking with mom that the night prior she was going out with as mom said, the so-called baby daddy who had impregnated her and kind of was with her along the way, doctor visits and such. They were supposed to go out to dinner, and he was the last person that according to mom, again, we have to kind of get through all this and prove it all up, was according to her, the last person seen with her. Picked her up for this dinner. She heard from her, and then that was it. That was the last she heard of her. So the night before. So she picked her up at like 10 o'clock at night. Mom hears from her like at 10:45 at night. And then she says, hey, we're at one of the local restaurants and I'll be home soon. That was the last time mom talks to her. And that's the last anybody's ever heard of her. She goes dark, basically. No more phone calls, phone's off. She's gone. She doesn't come home. And then obviously Easter Sunday, we find her in the woods.
So when you do find her and you get that call, what were some of the first things that you did on the scene? Because when I worked with you, usually when you're in an urban area, there's cameras, there's people around, people who may have seen things. When you're in the woods, there's nobody around. It's quiet. How do you canvass? How do you start searching for evidence that might be around there? What are some of the things that you guys did when you first got there?
It was kind of an odd wooded area. It was a wooded area that was surrounded on two sides by residential areas. There was one entrance for vehicles. I described it several times of if you didn't know it was there, you didn't know it was there, right? It just looked like you were passing by some trees. How that originating agency got notified of her even being there was one of the people that lived in that area that would walk their dog in the woods and came across the body. I was like, oh boy, this is not good. That's how that happened. So yeah, we did the same thing for any of the residential area, which wasn't much. It was a handful of blocks of houses. And you talk to some people, I think I heard a girl scream. It could have been coyotes. We get those a lot. They're yapping out there and it sounds like a person, but it's not. It sounds like a baby and all the things that you've heard over the years. But there was literally no video surveillance on any residences. This again, 2011. It's not like everybody had a Ring doorbell or surveillance cameras on their house. It was a difficult case to start off with because we have this girl with little to no evidence besides her. I mean, she's the evidence, and no witnesses, no surveillance, no nothing besides this guy who found her was basically like, yeah, I'm walking my dog. I do it every week on the weekends and came across this body. So yeah, it was really going to be based on an autopsy to see what we find there, like what's the cause of death, which there wasn't any apparent signs of a gunshot wound, any kind of stab wounds or anything like that. So we kind of figured like a strangulation type of thing, a suffocation initially because of the way she was found with no pants, no shoes on, no jacket, no purse. We're also thinking like she's with somebody where she's comfortable, right? Is she by a boyfriend's house? I'm going to take my pants off. I'm 9 months pregnant, comfortable. Let me get comfortable. I'm just going to sit here in my underwear and a t-shirt and then something goes wrong. Was she out with somebody, or was it a sex assault and they took the pants with and shoes? You know, I've always had the thought process of any case that we worked, things in, like any theory. Andy, what do you think? Jimmy, what do you think? Larry, what do you think? Like, could it be this? Yeah, it could be. We're going to explore that. But yeah, those cases are usually really, really difficult to gather a lot of evidence. And this is just one of those ones where we thought we had a little bit of an upper hand because we had the residential around there. Most of the wooded areas where I'm talking about the forest preserves, it's literally driving down the street. There's an entrance and you got trees and squirrels and deer, and that's it. So there's nothing. There's no one to talk to, no one to canvass, no one to get information from, no surveillance. We just got lucky that there was something, but really there wasn't a lot of information that we gathered up from the people around town.
So did the canvas pan out anything? Did the canvas give you any information?
Not really. There was a handful of people that said heard some screams, but again, it could have been a coyote. Nothing, again, video surveillance or anything like that. Once we got enough told with the, as mom described, baby daddy, once we had that information in the town that we were in, we're like, hey, you guys ever heard of this guy? And they're like, oh yeah, we've dealt with him a bunch of times. He's kind of one of those, the pain in the ass of the town, you know? So they were familiar with the guy. So we were like, okay, this is according to mom, last person seen, making a police report. On that agency that called for the missing person reached out to this guy to see. Mom says he was going to dinner with her, talks to him, the copper from that agency, and he's like, hey, we're trying to locate her. And he's like, yeah, I haven't seen her since Thursday or Wednesday. I don't know what to tell you. He's like, well, mom was saying that maybe you went out to dinner. He's like, no, we were talking about it. We never did. Okay. Well, you got a little bit of a story with him, and now it's kind of up to you to, if he's maybe your main suspect, kind of disprove that or blow up that story. His alibi of I was here, I was there, I was there. Based on what mom says with the Applebee's, we took a couple photographs of him, of the missing girl, Rosemary, and went to the Applebee's. And we talked to every server, every hostess, the cooks, anybody who was working that night to try to say, were they here? Just because he's saying he hasn't seen her. This is where Rosemary tells mom that she's at and who she's with. And we probably talked with 35, 40 people that worked there over the course of that day. And one of the last girls, she's like, yes, she was here, but she looks a little different. Okay, well, how is she different? Well, she had these long, braids, but they were red colored, and it's her to a T. Different from her driver's license photo, but describing her to a T, where you're like, there's no way this girl's making this up. She's describing how she looks now, not how she looks in that photo. And she says she was with a guy, and they didn't have a lot of conversation. They didn't stay long, and then they ended up leaving. I don't know if they were in an argument or whatever. Like, okay, showed a picture of the boyfriend, and she's like, yep, that's the guy she was with. Okay. So we got mom saying she's getting picked up for dinner. The DeAndre Meekins is the name. So DeAndre talks to the suburban agency and says, no, I haven't seen her since this day. And now I just put him in the restaurant with her the night before. So is he our number one prime suspect at this point? Absolutely. So it was like full court press. We got to find DeAndre. So that's kind of the direction we took at that point.
So was there any evidence on the scene? Did the medical examiner, did they find any physical evidence on her?
No, obviously the fact that she's pregnant. She had a small puncture wound in her back. Nothing that would be a fatal wound. Not very deep, maybe a half inch. And it didn't look like, it almost looked like a tool of some sort. It didn't look like a knife wound. Just a puncture wound that obviously didn't belong. Once the medical examiner did their examination, it basically said it was strangulation, which obviously then without her breathing, baby dies as well. So basically we were working as a double murder at that point. So we got very little information besides the cause of death from the medical examiner. There wasn't any any information that really helped us from any evidence that they gathered from the body.
Okay. Yeah. So then how did you end up finding DeAndre?
What was surprising is he didn't live far from where Rosemary was located. And by not far, I mean 3 blocks away. That was his home address. We went there, talked to friends, family, say we're looking for DeAndre. We're telling people basically we're investigating this missing person case. He's associated with her, maybe the father of her child. And when's the last time you saw her? We need to talk to him, obviously. And that's when we learned that he is with his girlfriend, goes by the name of Shantae Thomas. So Shantae Thomas lives on the north side of the city, which is, I don't know, maybe almost an hour away. So we're obviously trying to find DeAndre. We're doing everything we can. We're calling. We used some technology that gave us an proximate area of where he was at, which ends up being right near the apartment where Shantae lived. So we just basically, it's good old fashioned police work, surveillance, sit out there, and maybe we come across him. We were waiting to get a specific address on Shantae, and it just so happened we had like 2 or 3 cars up there. They come walking down the street. Here he is. I mean, it was just one of those things like we always say, like God comes down and says, like, hey, here's your guy. Here's a little help, divine intervention, and take him into custody. Shantae's like, what's going on? What are we doing here? And she goes, and the guy's just like, hey, people want to talk to him. We're like a taxi cab. We came to find him and we're bringing him back, and that's all we know. And she's like, can I come with? I'm like, absolutely. Because you're always hoping for what would be called a third party admission. Maybe he did something and then he tells her, like, man, I really screwed up and this is what happened. And we're hoping that maybe she'll cooperate with us. So, yeah, she's coming back with us for sure. Of her own free will. She wants to come with, and she's, I don't know, being nosy. I get it, right? Her boyfriend's being taken off in cuffs, and she's like, what's going on here?
I'd wonder.
Yeah, absolutely.
100% I'd wonder.
So we end up bringing them way back out south to our headquarters, to our district that we're working out of. Myself and my partner are obviously, I'm the lead. He's my number 2, and we're rocking and rolling. We're going to interview him. A couple other detectives go to interview her, and she's with us, I don't know, 3-4 hours, maybe more, and no help, no third party admission, nothing. She knows nothing. We eventually end up taking her back home because we have no reason to hold her, right? We got no evidence that says she's involved with anything. We interviewed DeAndre for probably 6-7 hours off and on. We gave him something to eat, took a break. You kind of give people a little chance to recuperate a little bit and keep interviewing them and get to where you're getting. He gives us nothing. He still is adamant. He hasn't seen her in X amount of days. Admits that he's the father of the child, has gone to doctor's appointments with her, involved in her life a little bit. And we kind of got into the nitty gritty. Like, how do you end up impregnating Rosemary when you're with Shantae? Is this a long-term thing? And him and Shantae had been boyfriend and girlfriend for close to 10 years, grammar school into high school. And just after they ended up in an argument, breakup for a short time. He ends up running into Rosemary and they get together, a couple of dates, and he ends up getting her pregnant. Like, that was the extent of his relationship with her. We talked to him for a long time. We really get nowhere with him. There's no admissions, there's no nothing. What he says to us is, go talk to somebody else or get me an attorney. And we're like, okay. So we went and talked to other people, right? We took option A. We just put him into our holding cell and kept him overnight and kept working away. So to backtrack with what we had that day, and we had 4 guys working on the case because that's all we had. It's Easter Sunday, right? And we never in the agency I was with, we had a huge involvement in the task force, but we had a very large investigative unit, so we really never used the task force. And at the time, Larry was in charge of the task force, and he was like, I'm calling him, right? We've got 4 guys. And the next day, there wasn't many people. People take time off and family stuff, and I get it. So we were bringing those guys in, and a lot of the stuff that we did was, thankfully, in large parts of those guys, is just coming in with 20, 25 detectives and knocking out in a couple of days what would take 4 guys a month, 2 months. I don't know. Would we ever get it done? I'm not sure. That was always the benefit of the task force. So it was like the one and only time that we used the task force with our agency. So we just kept plugging away and kept doing what we're doing. He did tell us some information about being out with Shantae and himself and another guy. His name was Josh, one of his friends, and they were out together all night and they went to the club, and that was it. Right. So, all right, well, DeAndre's not talking to us anymore. We got to go find Josh. He was with DeAndre. Maybe he's an accomplice. Maybe he was with him. Maybe they did this together. So I would say probably later on, it was probably that Monday, halfway through the day, we locate Josh. We bring him in. We're talking to him. Kid's up front. I mean, he's Mirandized. He's being video recorded at the time, which is a common thing these days. But back then, it was only for these certain crimes, obviously a murder being one of them. And the kid's an open book. Telling him what he did. I went here, I went there. Were you with DeAndre? He's playing along with the story, but it wasn't convincing. You know what I mean? Like you're like, okay, I'm gonna let this kid keep talking, but I'm not buying this fact that he's with DeAndre and they're at the club and everything's fine. So as we go through and he's like, nothing happened. So we end up getting to a point where we just lay it on him and say, hey, Josh, here's the thing. Obviously, we're looking for Rosemary. And he's like, yeah, he knew her a little bit through DeAndre. And I says, we found her. And he's like, awesome. But what am I doing here then if you found her? I says, well, we found her, but she's dead. And he's like, what? You can just see the look. I mean, like just the blood fell out of his face.
Right.
And it was kind of that point where he like started to step back, like, wait a minute, like she's dead, like suicide. She got hit by a car. What are we talking about? Oh no, she was murdered. She was murdered, Josh. And he just at that point we come to find out that Josh is the good kid, right? If you were in trouble and you got caught by this department and you were with Josh, like, nah, that wasn't me. I was with Josh. They're like, all right, Josh is a good kid. I mean, I could see this. This is plausible. But it was at that point, once we let him know that, where he kind of stepped back and was like, listen, this is way too heavy for me. I'm not in this. And he started to open up about the conversation that he had with DeAndre and then Shante, about this basically alibi. Like, hey, if the police ask, you were with me from this time to this time, he's very upfront and starts pouring his heart out, telling him about how he's talking to his girlfriend. I was texting with her. It's all on my phone. You can look at the phone. I don't care. Whatever you want. And it was all there. Everything that he told us from that point on, once we realized that he was in a murder investigation and not just a missing person investigation, everything that he tells us is dead on. There's conversation between him and his girlfriend, like, yeah, they put me into this and I don't want to get hung up on anything. So it kind of went from suspect to great witness. So one of the final things that he tells us is that the night prior, after we had released Shantae, he calls him, Josh, and says, stick with the story. And he's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that you were with us and we went to the club and this and this and this. Stick with that story. And we're like, that's interesting. Why would she be calling him and telling that? Because she was with the police. She told this story and we bought it because we have no reason to doubt her, right? We have no other evidence. So he's obviously on video. His statement's all locked in. He's very cooperative. At that point, we're cutting him loose and like, hey, thanks for everything. We're probably going to need you again. We're like, whatever you guys need, I'm in. I'm out of this. I'll be the alibi guy, but I'm not the alibi guy for a murder. So that's kind of took Josh out of the game at that point. We end up calling Shantae, talking to her and saying, hey, we got some more questions. Hopefully you can help us out. We'd like you to come back in. So she comes back in. And at this point, again, I don't know that she's involved in this murder, but she's part of the alibi. And she's telling Josh to stick with this BS story that they come up with. So at that point, we're kind of like, hey, she's obstructing the investigation. And that's basically what we had, and see where it goes. So she ends up coming back in. Her mom actually brought her down from the north side of the city. And we talked to mom like, hey, we're just trying to figure out what's going on. She's got some involvement. We're not sure what, but we just need her to talk to us and cooperate and we'll figure this out. So initially, when we start talking to her, we're going to Mirandize her at this point because she's in violation of obstructing of the investigation, right? We do that. And she says, I want a lawyer. Okay, no problem. And as hard as it is, or people might think it is, you don't have a choice. You have to stop right there. There's no further conversation. And she goes to lockup. Like, you can have a lawyer, but you're not going anywhere. So she's ends up sitting in the interview room for probably another half hour as we're getting all the paperwork ready. And she ends up knocking on the door and says, hey, I want to talk to you guys. Okay. So we give her Miranda again, like, hey, you understand? You asked for a lawyer. We're good. You want to talk to us? Yes. So she talks to us. And then the story starts to kind of unravel on her part, where we're thinking that she's a little bit more involved. And at that point, again, it's not something that's really admissible, but it's like a tool for us. We said, hey, things aren't lining up right here. Would you be willing to take a polygraph? And she agrees. So we said, hey, listen, we'll get somebody out here tomorrow. You're going to stay here with us. We'll get you something to eat, get some sleep, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Which is basically what we end up doing. Like I said, DeAndre's a thing of the past. He's in lockup. So we're done with him at that point, and we're just building a case. So she takes the polygraph the next day. We come back, and these are those times when we talked about getting very little sleep. These are the days. Like, they blend together, and you just keep rolling, and you get minimal sleep. Get home for a couple hours and get back up and do it again. But that's what we signed up for. That's what we did. And so polygraph operator comes in, talks to her, And it's a very long process. They're all video recorded. She gets re-Mirandized. It was just his policy. So we go through all that because they're going to ask them accusatory questions like, are you involved in this murder? Which they do. So he gets through that, takes the polygraph, and it's multiple tests. So we have a good reading, and if we know it's good, bad, is she lying? Is she there? Is she telling the truth? Whatever it might be. She gets done with those. The operator comes out, and he's like, it's not good. All the questions are, do you know who killed this girl? Or were you involved in killing this girl? Those are the type questions that are the key questions, the relevant questions they call them. And she destroyed every one of them. And by that, I mean, she was lying, like straight lying about everything. So at that point, it's kind of up to us. The operators will usually say, hey, I can start talking to her, or you guys know the facts of the case, which is usually the route we take. We talk with her. So he didn't want to talk with just anybody. There was one of the guys there that was one of the supervisors that she took a liking to, and she wanted to talk to him. And so he goes in there by himself, and he starts talking to her, and he's a very soft-spoken, nice person to talk to. And it was like he was talking to his daughter. What we kind of learned through the investigation after we got him in custody, her, the initial talk, the vehicle that they drove, we're getting video surveillance from their location, everything together. What we end up learning at that point prior to her taking that polygraph is she gets picked up by DeAndre. They go to this Applebee's. She's never heard from again. The car ends up being what we believe is our murder scene, where she's killed in the car and then dumped in the woods. That's kind of our theory based on what we have, processing of the car, some blood evidence that we found in the car. Obviously, it's got to be tested by the lab to say it's this guy's, hers, whoever's. So that's kind of our thought process, our theory on where we're going with this case, not knowing that anybody's involved at this point besides DeAndre, because he's the last person seen with her. I mean, it's not like he's taking his girlfriend to pick up his pregnant girl that he impregnated to go to Applebee's. It doesn't make sense. It's not a normal thought process. So we start talking to her, and she's starting to unravel. Like, she can't hold in the lie anymore. So we're monitoring the interview just so we can say, like, hey, let's talk more about this. Let's talk more about that. Did you see her reaction when you asked her this question? Just little things like that to help us along. And so this guy's talking to her, and it was unbelievable. It was one of those, like, you gotcha moments. And he goes, you were in that car, weren't you? And she like drops her head. It's a sign of like guilt in our field, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, you were in that car, weren't you? And she's in a real low voice, yes. And everybody that was watching the interview just stopped and looked at each other like, did she just say yes?
Yeah.
Did she just say she was in that car? And she was in the car. So as the interview goes on, now he's like, she's opening up. She doesn't want to get in trouble. She wants to go on with her life. And he's like, okay, but you got to tell me what happened. I'm not saying nothing's going to happen to you, but we need you to tell us. This is the only way. This was the plan. We met her a couple days prior, and he was supposed to carry out this mission of killing her. But he, in her words, he chickened out. So I think at the end of the day, when we were all done with this, I think she was more of the mastermind and the more evil of the two. I honestly think it was one of those things like they were boyfriend, girlfriend for so long, and she was going to be Mrs. DeAndre Meekins. And with Rosemary being impregnated by him, that was supposed to be her baby. And we got to get rid of her because she was just a mistake. Get rid of her, and then we move on with life. So she's in the trunk of the car. DeAndre had a Saturn. If you remember the Saturns, the back seats folded down from the trunk area. She says, I was back there, those seats fold down, and he played a song. I'm like, well, what song? Was that the cue for you to come out? She says, yeah. He's like, well, what song was it? She goes, I don't know. It was some guy that he was walking down the street one day and he gave him a CD, like, hey, man, here's my music. Take a copy of this and I'm going to be famous. You know, one of those guys, just a street performer that was passing out CDs. And she starts singing the song that it is. It was track 11 on the CD. And she says in her word, he kept playing it over and over and over. So when I heard that song, I knew it was go time. All right, go on. So the song comes on. Now what happens? This is where the car's moving and I'm in the back. At some point, I don't remember how it came up, which she brings up, she likes sunflower seeds. And we're like, okay, you like sunflower seeds, great. Next, move on. There's one of those like weird things that she said that it becomes relevant later in the investigation as we go on. So this song comes on, and she pops out from the back seat, right? Lowers that back seat. She's got a cell phone cord. She wraps it around Rosemary from behind and starts strangling her with that cord. And then DeAndre, she said at this point, starts reaching across and basically punching her in the face and the stomach and the chest, anything he could, where eventually she passes out. I can't say that she died right at that moment because it continued on. And then she tells us about how they drove to these woods and they carried her out there and dumped her out there. And that was it. And we're like, well, what about the clothes? What about her jacket? What about her purse? And she's like, I don't know. And she started to clam up a little bit, but she basically lays out the entire thing. And like I said, I think she was more of the mastermind of get rid of this girl and this baby. And he's my man. And this is the way it's going to be. She gives us that whole story about all that. Then what did you do next? We left. We went back to my place. We cleaned up. We went to the gas station. We cleaned out the car. And obviously, as she's talking about this, we're writing down what they did, where they went. We were able to get surveillance video of them walking back into the apartment after the incident occurs, going to the gas station, which was right down the street from her house. Surveillance video of DeAndre going in and grabbing change for the vacuum and shampoo machine. So it was a lot of great surveillance video footage. Once we learned what had happened, that kind of corroborated everything she told us, which was huge. She just continued on with everything they did and kind of laid out the whole story. She was like, okay, I'm going to tell you guys all this, and I just need to get back on with my life. And we're like, get back on with your life. You just admitted to being involved in a murder of a young girl and her unborn baby. Like, your life is over. I don't know if she didn't comprehend it or what. She was like living in two different worlds at the same time. And it was a little weird. When she said she was in that car, it was like the first time of like everyone just stopped and looked at each other like, it just happened. She's in there. She's in so deep right now that she ain't going anywhere.
So she strangled her with a cell phone cord?
Cell phone cord. Yeah, that was there wasn't a lot of ligature marks. Obviously, when she was at the medical examiner's office, that kind of corroborated that. We weren't sure what it was, and the problem with the ligature marks is it could be a belt, it could fold over, and it could show like a very thin line, but it could be a thicker object. So it's really hard to tell what it could be. You know, that's actually used as a ligature to strangle somebody. But after she told us that, we're like, that makes sense. She did talk about having some kind of screwdriver or something, and he said to stab her. We believe. We never got to that. She was playing dumb when we talked about during the interview when this guy's talking to her and she's talking about well, where was she found? You know, when she was still trying to like suck information out of him. And he goes, she was in the forest preserve. And she's like, forest preserve? What's that? Is that like a lot of grass, a lot of trees, little trees? And we're like, what is going on? Like, this is the Twilight Zone. Everything that she told us, we corroborated with video. And there were certain aspects of it that as we went on, even after they both end up getting charged, with first degree murder and homicide of an unborn child. So it's a double murder. Ends up being a if convicted, a natural life case because of the two victims. It was crazy because as you're going through, you're reviewing evidence, you're still finding little things where you're like, this makes sense. So when we found her, mind you, it's April, right? When we find Rosemary in the forest preserve, and there's water all over the place. There's standing water, the grass is wet, it's muddy, becomes relevant when we see the surveillance video. And it was actually one of the state's attorneys who was looking at the photos of some of the still shots of the surveillance video. Like I said, these things don't stop just because you charge somebody. And she goes, look at her pants. So you could see on the bottom of her pants, she was wearing jeans, like a line where it looks like it's wet when jeans get wet. And it's like, wow, that is so relevant because they dumped her in the woods and she's on video with these wet jeans only on the bottom, which would make sense if you're walking through a wet area. There was a lot of stuff like that that came up after the actual charging of these two. The other thing was we were looking again at photos of the car when they processed it. We were so busy, we didn't have enough evidence technicians. We had the FBI do the processing of that vehicle. It was a big case and double murder, and we call in the next group, which ends up being the FBI. So we're looking at those photos again, just kind of going through them again and again and again. And like, did we miss something? Is there something here? Is there something she said? So as the seats are folded down and they take photos of that, in the crevice of the where the seat would fold back up, there's sunflower seed shells from eating sunflower seeds. And we're like, I don't know why she made mention of this in the video, in the interview, of having loving sunflower seeds and eating sunflower seeds all the time. I couldn't tell you for the life of me how it came up, but it was so relevant then when she says she's in the trunk and here's physical evidence in the car, in the crevice of the seat that comes down, of sunflower seeds. Now we're taking the seeds. Now we're sending them in for DNA comparison. Are they hers? Does it corroborate her story? Because just because they say they did something, you still got to prove it. We have all that evidence and surveillance video, and that kind of matches up, but there's still work to do. You don't charge somebody and then be like, all right, guys, this isn't Law and Order. 5 minutes later with commercials and we're done. It goes on for days, weeks, months, depending on what you have to build up to get that conviction.
So did you ever find Rosemary's pants? Did you ever
Nope.
figure that? No?
We searched dumpsters up near her apartment. We searched garbage cans at the gas station, garbage dumps, wherever those places would pick garbage up and then dump it at, just to see if we could locate those. And obviously she's missing shoes, pants, jacket, purse. We did canvases in the alley from where DeAndre lived. We collected, I can't tell you how many bags of discarded clothing, brought it into the district, laid it all out, took photographs, had mom come in, sit down and say, I need you to look at these photos and can you identify any of this clothing, right? Because I'm thinking, did he have clothes at his house for her? Did he bag them up? Did he dump them? And we did find a couple doors down in the garbage. Mom identified none of it as being hers. So it was kind of like, we thought we hit the jackpot, but you didn't. You just had somebody who was cleaning out their closet or whatever the case was.
And just to let people know, I'm sure they heard it a couple times so far in this episode. You've heard us mention what canvassing is. Canvassing can be one of the most mundane, somewhat frustrating jobs that a detective or a police officer can do, but it could also be the most rewarding when you get somebody that wants to talk to you. So what canvassing is, it's when you're out in a residential neighborhood, you're knocking on doors, you're going to apartment complexes, and you're asking people, hey, did you hear anything? Did you see anything? Anything that could possibly help you with the case. And a lot of times people won't talk to you. But in those off chances, there are quite a few times where people are willing to talk to you and they give you some information and very, very valuable tips that end up leading to an arrest. So a lot of the times these cases, they don't happen at 1, 2 in the afternoon when it's 70 degrees and sunny. A lot of the times it's 3 o'clock in the morning when it's either raining or it's or it's snowing, or if it does happen at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, it's 100 degrees or it's 30 below zero and you're out there. But like I said, we have to do it. But it pays dividends in the end when you do get that information.
Yeah, I totally agree. And being a part of the task force, it was canvas. And when you're done with that, we're going to canvas and maps of streets and marking off addresses that we know we hit, going back and hitting the ones we didn't have anybody at home. Who'd you talk to here? Talk to Mrs. Jones. Okay, is Mrs. Jones have a Mr. Jones? Go back and talk to him. Does Mr. Jones and Mrs. Jones have a little Jones? Go back and talk to them. They may have know something, may know somebody from the neighborhood. But yeah, invaluable. And I can't tell you how many times, and you can attest to it, over the years of the cases where you're thinking like, I gotta go be a canvas guy. And they're so important because I can't tell you how many witnesses, physical evidence, or anything that helped the cases off of a canvas. And the guys, when you said canvas for like the 7th time, and everyone was like, this guy and his canvases. And we'd find something and they'd be like, all right, I get it.
Well, it helped on one of our murders years ago when I was a detective in our town. There was an officer in the city of Chicago that I happened to be friends with, and I gave him the information of the suspect that we were looking for.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, he goes, I'll go in the area and I'll take a look. And I just remember that he was just knocking on a couple doors where we believe that the suspect lived. And I remember there's like this little old lady who just sits in her window all day long, watching everybody go by, watching every car go by. And my buddy showed her a picture. Hey, do you know this guy? She looks at the picture and she just goes, yeah, I do. And in fact, that's him right there. He's sitting on his porch with his wife. And my buddy goes, what? And he turns and he looks across the street and here's this guy sitting on a porch with his wife having a beer. And he walks over and he goes, hey, how you doing? He goes, good. This you? He said he put his head down up and you're under arrest for murder. Yeah. And there's some little old lady who just sits in her picture window all day long and watches the world go by, helps solve one of our murders. It was great. I just want to touch on when we're talking about like the interrogations and the questioning, especially a lot of times we'll go in there as detectives in pairs. We'll just go in there and we'll start talking to suspects. And right away, just like human nature, sometimes these suspects and us as detectives will actually have chemistry with that person.
Yes.
And after a short amount of time, you start seeing that chemistry develop. And that's okay. If you see that the chemistry is developing, say like with your partner, you have to check your ego
Yes.
and just kind of maybe take the back seat a little bit. And now you're going to be the note taker and you're going to be the guy that's going to kind of just shut up, sit in the background and listen. And then every once in a while interject. But your job is still valuable. But you have to kind of like,
I'm laughing at you because I know you didn't work this case. I couldn't have like scripted this better because that's exactly what happened in this case. When we were talking to DeAndre, now it's my case and I'm the lead, right? Like I'm ultimately responsible for the entire investigation. But the guy I'm working with is great detective. Rob, he's a great detective and he's kind of like that goofy guy, but you could tell from word go that him and DeAndre were on the same level. And I literally like started scooting back and just listening. And like I said, occasionally, but what about this? Okay, go back.
yep.
Hey, what about this? And go back. That's what you have to do. And it's like you said, check your ego at the door and let's get this case solved. And that is exactly what happened in this interrogation. And it's so funny that you mentioned that because I talk about that when classes we teach. And I'm like, this is a prime example of no ego. This is my case, but you tell that somebody's jiving with somebody else, take that back seat. If you have to be like, hey, I got to take this call and get out of there. As hard as it might be for you, like, I got to be in here. I got to get confession. It doesn't matter as long as somebody gets the confession, right? I wanted to cue that up. Go, Andy. And you're 1,000% right on that.
Well, one of our murders, it's just so funny because my old partner, Dave Weston, I had him on an episode too.
Yeah.
One of the nicest, most laid back, humble, just a great human being. And I remember one of our murders, him and I sit down and we're going to talk to someone involved in the murder. And he looks at me and he looks at Dave and he just points at Dave and he goes, you know what? I don't like you. I'm not saying a word if you're in this room. And Dave never said a word to him. This is the first time that they met. They had no history. And he just literally pointed in Dave's face and goes, I don't like you. Yeah. And I'm not talking to you. And I'm not saying a word as long as you're in this room. I just remember Dave just kind of looking over at me and he just
goes, to pull a ripcord.
Yep. He's like, I'm out. I'll talk to you a little bit later. And that's what happens. And again, he's on the outside of the room. Every once in a while, sending me a text. Hey, what about this? Maybe ask this. And
like
again,
you said, dying to get in there, but knows it's not the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Knows it's not the right thing.
Exactly. So then what ended up happening in the court case?
Well, my wife was just really thrilled when that trial came up.
I'm sure.
Because of the prep, right? So what ends up happening is they both get charged. We build like this insurmountable kind of a circumstantial case in addition to her statement, but we have this huge amount of circumstantial evidence, video evidence, and her statement. Again, DeAndre really doesn't tell us much. They both get charged with first-degree murder and homicide and unborn child. It's my first natural life potential sentencing case.
No stress there.
No stress at all. No stress at all. And the state's attorneys we had were probably two of the best. Ted Lagerwall, remember Teddy? Ted was pretty much the lead on it, and there was a couple others that were working with him. Ted's gone now from the state's attorney's office where we were at, moved on. But like, you want to talk about the guy that thinks 12 steps ahead? Well, he was like 24 steps ahead, and it was set up, and the way they had it laid out in this room, we were prepping for probably 2 weeks, like every day. And
it's a lot.
It ends up being a 2-week trial and a double jury because of two defendants. So it was like, okay, you've got both juries in there for opening statements. You got both juries in there when everything pertains to both of them. And then we got to take a break because now we're going to talk about stuff that only pertains to DeAndre. Shantae's jury has to be taken out. And then they get switched and they both come back in. And I mean, it was like, holy Christ, this is unbelievable. But again, I talk about this case like it was yesterday because of that. Because when you go in and you're on the stand, you have to know your case because they're going to attack you on every front. They're trying to catch you up. The defense attorney is trying to get you to slip up on something. And you can always look at your report to refresh your memory on things. But I knew that case by the end of that 2-week prep, just from living it, typing it, and then prepping for it, that I can talk about it now like it's yesterday. God love my wife because she over the years has dealt with a lot with me. But it was yeah, definitely stressful. And there were times when she's like, are you even here? Like, I'm like, no, I'm thinking about this case. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be here, but I'm here, but I'm not present. So it went off without a hitch. I mean, the way they had it mapped out with, hey, this one's going to do this, and then the medical examiner's coming, and then this guy's going to come in, and then Lefko's going to go on the stand, and then this guy's going to go on the stand. Like a scripted movie. Went on perfectly. Like I said, 2-week trial. Yes, very stressful. There were multiple times when Rob was supposed to testify, and then they watched the video and they're like, wow, we don't like the way Rob said this. And we think the jury might maybe not like him as much. Scott, you're going to testify. So it was like, cross out Rob, add Scott. So I was on the stand for probably a week, here and there, of the 2 weeks, just with everything that we had to cover as far as how we got here, interrogations, location, and interviews, and everything that we found. So yeah, definitely stressful, but we made it through. Everything was good. Even like the point where multiple motions prior to even getting the trial. Was she in custody when she came with DeAndre? We had to have a motion on that and fight that. And there was no issues with it. There was just something to pick at for the defense. When she came in and she was there for obstruction, they said she was there for the murder. And we're like, no, we didn't know until she made this statement as she was in the car after the polygraph, and she was Mirandized multiple times. Like, a lot of that stuff went into motion before we even got to a trial phase, which we won all of those. The one that we lost was anything that DeAndre said after he said, go talk to somebody else or get me an attorney. And they said, well, you went back in there after he asked for an attorney. And I says, well, he gave us an option. And he said, go talk to somebody else or get me an attorney. And we chose option A. And we went and talked to other people. And then we came back. So that was the one motion that we lost, which was the judge says, okay, everything after that is out, which he didn't say anything anyway, right? There was nothing that we really lost. But after the 2-week trial, and again, you're done. They've presented their case. The defense has done their job. And then it's like, you got to wait for that jury to come back. And you're hoping that you guys did everything you could. And like I said, they did. The attorneys did a phenomenal job. Everybody did a great job testifying. Weren't able to really impeach anybody or break anybody down with wrong facts. I mean, it was a very tight case. So jury goes into deliberation. I would have to look them up. I was, jury's out at 12:04 on Friday.
Right.
And I think I would have to say it was probably within an hour and a half, they come back. They're done. And I'm like, hey,
It's either good or bad.
Ted, is this good? And he's like, it can
Yeah,
go
it's
either
either
way.
good or bad.
It's either good because they said this is the easy one, like everybody agreed they're guilty, or they didn't even come close to proving this case and we're done. And I've been here for 2 weeks and I'm out of here. Right. So you never know how they're going to go. Both came back guilty. And when that's done, it's like touchdown. We did it. Right. We did it. There's justice for Rosemary. There's justice for her unborn baby. The family that you've become close to because you're dealing with them so much and keeping them up to speed. You just see the joy on their face, and just having those people thank you. It was just my job, but to them, it's everything. They lost the child and a granddaughter. By you doing your job, it brings a little bit of, I don't want to say closure, and it's okay now. But, it makes you feel good. But at the end of the day, like you said, you're like, it was just our job. We just solved the murder. The next week, went in for sentencing, or a couple weeks later. And again, I invited everybody that worked the case, like, hey guys, they're doing sentencing. You're all welcome. Handful of guys showed up. And the attorneys did a great job of presenting facts of what we proved, double murder, everything that we had based on case law and the charge and what the sentence should be. The judge agreed and gave them both natural life in prison.
Great
So
job.
when you're able to put two people away who deserve it for natural life, like you don't have to worry about them ever killing another girl and her baby again. Nothing more fulfilling than that. And then once it's done there, then it goes to the appellate court. They're going to appeal. They're going to check it. And that call was probably just as good as the conviction and the sentencing. When Ted called me up and says, everything came back, all the appeals, they're done. We're good. Conviction stands. Natural life. It's over. Like, it's not coming back. There wasn't a mistake. There wasn't an error. There wasn't ineffective counsel or several reasons that these cases come back. And to hear that, it was just like, all right, this is done. This is good.
Yeah, it's such a relief when you do get across that finish line, and there is so much pressure on you. For the victim, for the victim's family. You want to do the right thing. You hope you did the right thing. You didn't make any mistakes. And when you do get across that finish line, man, there's very few feelings that are that are like that. It's
Yes,
just
absolutely.
it's just job
At the
well
job,
done, and
right?
yeah,
At the job.
absolutely. So yeah, great job by you, great job by the task force, great job by everybody that was involved in that case. Rob, everybody.
Over my career, your career, I mean, so many cases that we work that you can talk about, and there's ones that stand out. I could talk about this with people, and I any classes that we teach, and we talk about this case, and they're like, "Man, you just like, do you like keep studying this case?" I'm like, "No, it's ingrained, it's burned into my head. It just doesn't go away just because the case is over and you got a conviction. It stays with you." But yeah, this was definitely one of the bigger cases that I worked on, obviously, because you have a poor victim that's 18 years old and just starting life and going to have a child and snuffed out because she's going to have the baby that this other girl wants. Like, it's so stupid, the reasoning. Not that it matters for us, because the goal is, solve it, get them charged and get them convicted.
Right.
Yeah, like I said, nothing better. But yeah, definitely one of the highlighter cases of my career for sure. Yeah, I kind of touched on it with with obviously the trial prep, with my wife, and God love her, she's dealt with me over the years. Like I said, when we talk about the task force, it's like, oh yeah, the task force. No, for me, I was there for 17 years. Last 6 of them, I was the commander, and that's every phone call, every murder. You're getting called, you're going, and you get to that point. And when I got to that point where I was the lieutenant up in investigations, I was still working the task force, more responsibility at my primary job, and then the task force on top of it. It builds up, and then you think about the family. And Larry told me the same thing. Like, Blair, how'd you know when you were done? And he's like, well, you'll know. Normally, when you would get those calls, it was like, all right, here we go. Whew, we're going to work a murder, right? We're going to go get justice for people. When I made that decision, and you kind of groom that next guy to take over that spot, and when you feel they're ready, and you talk like, hey, are you ready? I think you are. Are you ready? And Eric was the next guy in line, and he was like, yeah, absolutely. I think I'm good. He was the assistant commander for some time before taking over. But when I was resigning, I guess you would say, from task force on that January, wife and I were in Vegas over New Year's Eve, and Eric texted me and said, "Hey, we got a murder. I know you're still in charge for another day, but wanted to let you know." And I'm like, "I'm good. Thanks. Appreciate it. Best of luck."
Right.
But yeah, no, it takes a toll. It's a lot of stuff. That's the things that people don't hear about, like on these podcasts, unless we talk about it, to let them know, like, hey, these are really cool cases. And for people that don't do this, they're like, wow, this is really cool. It's like watching a great series on TV. This is what we got to live. I think we're fortunate for that, and we've done a lot of great work together, all of us. But what people don't see on those police shows and all that stuff is the toll it takes on your family, the wives, the husbands, the girlfriends, the boyfriends, the canceled dinners, the canceled trips, everything that goes with it. Nobody really knows about that. So again, it's one of those opportunities like, hey, thanks, Andy, for having me on here. But here's kudos and a shout out to all the wives and husbands and girlfriends, boyfriends, whoever it might be, the kids, the missed birthdays, the missed Christmases, the missed everything, because you have people who are dedicated to this job that have done it. And I think that needs to be said. Hopefully on every one of your podcasts, somebody throws it out, that shout out to the families that have dealt with us over the years, and you just can't say enough. And like I told you, I teach a homicide class with Larry and a couple other guys for that next group. Like, hey man, I've been fortunate to have a great career, and I've been involved in a lot of stuff, and I want to share this with you, so you guys have an upper hand when you're walking into this stuff. Like, here's my experience. Here's the pitfalls. Here's the goods, the bads. I always talk about, yes, you have to be involved and you got to be immersed in this profession to be good at it. But remember, you have a family, right? And we've talked about it before, but I tell these guys in this class, like, I made mistakes in my life, right? We all have. And I was kind of new on the task force, and like you said, the call came in, and you're like, woo, here we go, right? And you're all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you're the new guy on the block. I gotta go. They need me there. They don't need you there. There's 25 other guys, right? If you got something going on, I always tell these guys, like, if you have something in your life that's important, then be there, right? Yes, you got to be there for the team, but you got to be there for your family, because eventually you say, hey, team, see you later, right? And who's left? My biggest fault was I left my wife's best friend's wedding. Kids were there. She was standing up. The phone rings. And I'm like, I gotta go. And I did. Ends up being something that's not even a murder, doesn't qualify. I show up there. Larry was there running the team, and he's like, get out of here. He's like, where were you? I go, I had a wedding. Get out of here, right? He knows when it's time, when we need people. Went back, got back to the wedding, all is well. And do you think I still hear about that? Yes, I do.
Yes, it is.
Yes, I do. And I tell the guys like, hey, this was my biggest mistake. Don't make the same mistake. Learn from me, right? I'm telling you about the goods and the bads and the pitfalls and the glories of working murders. And here's the goods and the bads of your family, right? The afterlife after you leave this job, and the teams and your partners and the place I retired from. And Larry said it, there's a handful of people that still reach out, and most of the people are like, who? Scott, who? Your wife's still there. Your kids are still there, right? But yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be talked about.
That's very well said. And it's crazy because for me, that I've noticed over the years, the hardest part of the job is not doing what we did, being out there every day, operating. And we knew what we were getting into when we signed up.
Yep.
But for me, the hardest part of the job was two things that no one really talks about or tells you about. The politics, internal and external, let's face it, they're there, and they will always be there, number one. And number two is the work-life balance. And that was probably the hardest thing for me to deal with, was that work-life balance, trying to keep that scale balanced. Because when they go off kilter one way or the other one's going to suffer. It was always that game. And like you said, I've made mistakes, and there's been times where I've let that scale tip. And then there's been times where I've been able to balance it out. But it's a constant battle to keep that work-life balance. And that for me was probably especially my tenure as a detective. And I had a great time working with all of you guys. And I've played hockey my entire life, and I've been on some fantastic teams. But I tell you what, that task force, working with you and Larry and all the men and women on that task force, was probably by far one of the best teams that I've been a part of in my entire life. And it's something I'll take with me for the rest of my life. And I just wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank everybody on the task force that I worked with over those years, Larry, and everybody who just kind of took me under their wing like you guys did. You didn't have to be a supervisor. I mean, I had guys on that task force when I came in, and they were seasoned guys. They weren't even supervisors, who looked out for me and really taught me the ropes and taught me the right way to do things. And you guys had patience with me, and I learned a lot, and I learned the right way to do things.
His career, anybody that's been on it, they'll all talk about it. Like, I was only on it for 2 years and I got promoted and I got pulled off, but great experience, lifelong friends. And we're talking now, right? We're both retired from one and on the new careers or different department, but same career. But yeah, it's just in like you said, I won't talk to you for, I don't know. Life happens, 3 months, 6 months, 2 weeks, whatever it is. And you can call me up and be like, hey buddy, what's going on? Nothing. We're just over here doing this. And it's like you never left, right? I mean, those are the relationships and friendships that you build up over the years that never go away. But again, family's always there. So you couldn't have said it better. Like, having that balance is huge. It's huge.
It is. So Scotty, I just wanted to say thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on. Thank you for your mentorship. And I just wish you nothing but the best going forward.
Appreciate it, buddy. Good talking to you. And thanks for having me on.
Of course, bud. Anytime. You take care of yourself.